We are fulfillment tools, if this works. We are a spin-off of Rewe. Most of you probably know Rewe is the second largest retailer in Germany, and we are a spin-off about 1 year old. We're about 50 people, and we are developing SaaS software solutions in the omnichannel fulfillment space. Come to that in a second. But although we are just 1 year old, we actually go all the way back to 2016 when a fulfillment tribe was launched at Rewe Digital, one of the digital initiatives of Rewe. So we have 5 years of experience. We have our first customer signed last year, and a few months ago our first international customer. And what we do, as I said, we are your omnichannel fulfillment expert. We basically provide you with end-to-end SaaS-based software as a service, omnichannel solutions for retailers, distributors, and brands. We do this globally. We have a global network of partners, technology partners, system integrators, and solution partners. And our solution is based on what Gartner, some of you might know, Gartner's composable architecture logic, which means very fast and very flexible implementation and very cost-effective. We have one question. That's typically I stress how fast that could be, but we have one question prepared in terms of implementation speed, so we'll talk about that later. One of the things we do, just to give you a bit of an idea, is a distributed order management system. On the left-hand side, you see a typical setup. You see this is an example from Germany, where there's a retailer with outlets across the federal states. Someone, in this case in the federal capital of Berlin, is ordering something online, and typically this is routed. Given the size of the country, it's typically just one central warehouse near Frankfurt, and it takes 2 to 3 days. That's a typical example of a retailer. Probably 90% of retailers operate that way at this point in time. If everything works perfectly, the fulfillment from the customer's point of view takes 2 to 3 days. We do have customer examples where it takes 7 or 9 days for various reasons, but that's no longer competitive. So one of the things we're providing is a distributed order management system that understands all these nodes of your network, be it a warehouse or a store, and if somebody orders, for example, again in this case in Berlin, and near Berlin or in Berlin there's a store that can fulfill the order, it's happening and fulfilled via and routed via this store rather than the central warehouse. And this speeds things up, depending on your specific industry you're operating in, could be same day or next day delivery. And with this, you're competitive with Amazon, for example. And we come to that in a second. So that's what we do. That's one example. And that's already it. And last thing is I wanted to provide you a bit of context to the discussion, which starts momentarily. This is how we see retail and how retail has evolved over the last centuries, if you like. I don't want to go into the history, that would take too much time, but let me just focus on the right-hand side, the era of the customer. We think we're in the second half of the era of the customer. Era of the customer started in the mid-90s with a company you're familiar with that dominated, still dominates this era based on convenience, a company called Amazon. But this is no longer enough. We're entering the second half where we think hybrids, these are retailers who can combine on and offline, will be the dominant design in retail. Who the dominant player will be, we don't know. Amazon is entering the offline space, and companies like Walmart that have dominated the previous era are entering the online space. Clearly, hybrids will win. And in order to win, you need what we call here, in terms of your competence, omnichannel automation. You need to manage and be able to manage on and offline seamlessly from an omnichannel perspective. And the key in the first half of the era of the customer was convenience, where Amazon is in a brilliant position. Most companies can't challenge them really, but experience online is very limited. And that's where the strength of your store network comes into play. And this is already it, but the last thing I wanted to state is in most companies, most prospects, most customers we talk to, these omni-channel initiatives are embedded in a bigger digital transformation initiative. Be it loyalty scheme, be it data lakes, whatever you might be interested in. And I just want to point out, if you're interested, please let me know afterwards, to a 2-year-old article in the California Management Review, which looked into 3,500 digital transformation projects and the key success factors there, which also imply to omni-channel related initiatives. And with this, I'm done, and now you have to work. So I'm very glad I can relax now, right? That's the plan. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any quick questions based on what
I had a certain...
Hello? Where did that come from? Okay. Any quick questions? Okay, right, I'm going to launch Slido. See if we can do it at the back. So basically, if you haven't done it already, you need to use your phones. Get out of your way. Go to Slido, if you can capture that. Get away from the speaker. Brilliant. But go to slido.com, enter that code, hashtag 665330. That will then launch the poll. Jürgen has prepared some interesting questions. The first question. Okay.
I actually don't remember that question, John.
Fulfillment tools.
Are you sure it's one of my questions?
Yeah, I'm not so sure that is one of your questions. What is it? Don't work with, is it children, animals, and technology? Right, let me just double check, because nope, that's not your questions. Forget Slido, because these are not our questions. So I'm going to ask you, you said, good job I took a picture of them yesterday. Okay, so the first question I want you to think about is, in the case of physical stores, first of all, who is an omnichannel retailer in the room? Brilliant, loads of you, that's fantastic. So, for you guys specifically, in your context as omnichannel, what future role do you see stores having in your business model going forward? Critical to the customer experience, or I'm going to change the question slightly, or cosmetic, have it there, but the real focus is going to be online. Yeah? What role, we're trying to get to, what role will the stores play in the future of your business model? Okay, you got it? Right. Okay, Florian, you were brilliant yesterday, so I know you're a guy with a lot of ideas, so what's your view of the role of your network?
Well,
it's on.
For us, it's definitely going to be...
Oh, it's not on. It's on now, go.
Okay, yeah. Definitely going to be, it's going to be the first of the answers. So we are sure, as I'm working for a textile discount company in Germany, and we definitely believe in physical locations.
Yeah.
That will be, customers, first of all, customers want to shop, and then also we don't believe that our business model is completely transferable to the digital space, the discount business model. So for us, rather the online side of the business is cosmetic at the moment, and also in the future I think it's important that for us we take place in the digital space.
Yeah.
So we create relevant touch points online, but we do believe that the customer interactions for us will be mainly offline in the future. But however, and actually me and Jürgen discussed this, we have been discussing for a while already. I believe that you have to have somewhat of a seamless customer journey on and offline. And I do believe that you said 2-3 days is too long already. I think our customers would accept 2-3 days, but we are not even at 2-3 days at the moment. And that's more like the question for us. How are we going to reach a level that is acceptable for our customers? And definitely, I think leveraging the POS we have is the most important thing to do for us. We have 2,000 physical locations, and I think it's very important that we just try to make the most out of it. And I think many other retailers as well. If you have a significant store base, and I think significant for me starts if you have more than 50 stores. You have to think about how can you use your offline presence to maximize the value out of it, and also use it and connect it with digital offers. That's my point of view on this.
Can I ask you, Florian, what is for the online purchase, what's a typical delivery time slot? Is it 5 days? Is it 4 days?
For us, we differentiate in direct delivery and click and collect.
Okay.
Direct delivery, I would argue we're probably around 3 to 5 days in Germany.
Okay.
In Germany. We also in Italy, Austria, that's obviously longer. For click and collect, for us right now, I'd rather not say. It's over a week. Yeah, because what we do right now, click and collect, we serve it from our central DC. We don't pick in the stores.
Right.
And if you serve it from central DCs, we have one store delivery per week. So that means if we receive a customer order today and the truck has just left central DC, the order sits there for the next 7 days and waits for the next truck to arrive.
Right.
And I mean, it's because we are completely offline driven, but we realize, online gains more and more importance. And I think either you figure out a way, even if online is not going to be the major part of your business. I think we are in 2021. We have to figure out a way to have at least an acceptable process, acceptable customer experience. And we discussed yesterday about transparency of inventory at the POS.
Yeah.
That's crucial. That's step number one.
Yeah.
And then the second step is, all right, then really connecting the orders with the inventory at the POS to at least, for us, I think it's very important, at least start fulfilling the orders you can fulfill from store, that you do that. Yeah. And then cut down delivery times, where it's easily doable.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you for that very complete response. Any comments, Jürgen, in terms of, obviously you guys have had a private conversation, but what's your comment about that? Is that a typical, is that almost like a perfect client for you guys, because you can help them with that first base, which is the stock visibility?
Exactly. That's why we have been talking for weeks now, basically, and that's what we see. The bigger retailers, 50 plus thousands. It's a huge asset to have those stores, and you can have. In some cases, it doesn't matter. But there's, for example, another customer we're talking to in the cosmetics industry, let's say, and they have stores in prime locations, city center, and they can now compete with Amazon in the sense of the click and collect setup, for example, or even ship from store, so not central warehouse, but from these central stores within 2 hours or 3 hours. Amazon can't do that. So they see, and they were discussing, they have probably about 300 stores in Germany in that case. They were discussing closing them because they were not profitable, some of them. But now they see this as an asset to sort of augment the online world, if you like, for this fast and speedy delivery. In some cases, I think we discussed probably 2 to 3 days should be enough. You don't need same-day delivery or next-day delivery. But it depends on your industry and on your customers.
Yeah, okay.
But the key really is to activate your stores.
I think the bottom line is if you don't harness your stores become a negative asset, because it's cost burden on the business model, right? But if you can somehow make them a competitive advantage, at the moment Amazon doesn't really have stores, although to an extent they're starting to do that, which is ironic, right? Anybody else want to comment on this issue of how you can turn your store network into an asset for the business?
If not, I would like to add one dimension.
Please.
Because we've been talking about products. There's another dimension. If you sell premium products that require consultative selling, there is this thing called click and meet, where you actually reserve time with an expert in your store. And that's another. So it's not about the product per se, but about the service element as well.
Yeah.
Just want to add another dimension to the discussion.
Okay. So anybody else want to comment on this before we move on to another question? No? Yes, go on. Thank you, sir.
Hi, I'm from France. We are selling cultural goods as books, music, and musical appliances and all that. And we focus on the store, but we are fearing that the added value of the people on the field is the relationship with the customer. Is not necessarily preparing loads of goods. At the end, it's the objective to sell, but we are fearing that the time we have saved in the stores with diverse processes will be consumed by moving our sellers from consulting to preparing goods for the customer. So at the end, we end up with logistics teams in the stores. So it's a bit, for the moment, we don't know yet how to shift, because the cost of preparation, of course, in the store is higher than the cost in our warehouse. So it's not that simple to shift.
Do you want to comment on that? Is that something that...
Absolutely. That's the classic discussion of the trade-off between central and decentral. And in some cases, one discussion we've had is the store doesn't have the space to actually do that. So you might think about different types of stores where you provide, say, a ship-from-store service, not from all your outlets. Or the other option is, which is a bit less restrictive, if you like, let the customer come. Because if you say the personal relationship is very important, do a click and reserve logic or follow a click and collect logic, because customer comes to your shop. Because what we see is, in about 50% of cases, those who buy something online and opt for click and collect, they come to your store and they buy more. Right? But you're absolutely right. There's a trade-off, and you need to see with what stores you can do this in terms of space and the people, and where it doesn't make sense.
Okay. Florian? I think it's on. It should be on.
Yeah. Just commenting on this. I think what's important is, for us, what we've seen in the numbers so far, we're in the pre-analysis phase. We see a clear correlation of lead time to non-pickup rates, in terms of click and collect. So, in terms of business case, I think what we are looking at, or in a first step we're looking at, is what is your uplift from cutting down lead times? Because you know your function of pickup in relation of time. Then you know your gross profit uplift from this, and then that's basically what you have to weigh against increased staffing level, maybe even packaging material, all this, and that's the first calculation we do at the moment. And then if you actually want to elaborate on this forward, is probably over longer, what I would assume, that's my hope at least, over the midterm, let's say 6 to 12 months, I would assume that you see a better allocation in marketing spend, because I would assume that the one-time customer rate drops. If you just deliver a better process, I would assume that you have more returning customers, so your customer acquisition cost in the marketing should actually also reduce. And that's what if you really want to figure it all in, that's what I think could do for a business case. But in the end, I think it's also a decision if you just want to do it in 2021. That's where we are at.
Do you know, it's really interesting listening to you. And the third question here is about the barriers to improving or harnessing your retail network. Yeah, is it cultural? Is it a role issue in terms of turning them into logistics people instead of consultative selling people, and you've got the pushback? That's not what they signed up to do, to put parcels together and so on. So is it a systems issue, legacy IT systems? So you need to have that visibility, and you need to outsource and get an expert in to show you how to do it. Is it a business model issue? So I remember when e-commerce first kicked in the UK for supermarkets and groceries, Tesco's and Sainsbury's were the 1 and 2 in the market. Okay. And Tesco went the fulfilment store. So they had a minimum viable product, was literally online. They'd get an order sheet and they'd pick in the store, bag it up, and then ship it. Sainsbury's went the dark store route, right? Took them longer. It took them a while to get the proposition up and running, but it works really well. And most of the supermarkets have gone the dark store route using Ocado technology and know-how and so on. So if that's an example, it's about how can you harness your store network So there's cultural pushback, you've got IT systems, you've got training, you've got other issues. What other issues? Those that have, has anybody done it and is really pleased and it's working really well for them? Are you all in pretty much a transition stage at the moment? Okay, but do you know the business model? Do you want to explain?
No, he was just nodding.
Ah, okay. So anybody got it right and they want to share the success story?
So much opportunity for us. Brilliant.
I wish. Okay. So what is the biggest barrier? Why are you not all at his stand doing this? What's the barrier for you to do it? I know you guys are already talking, so this one's not for you. But is it just simply a case of you're so busy you can't get around to doing it, or are there other reasons? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, one of the things, because in principle it's fairly simple to fulfill an order from a warehouse or fulfill from a store. Where it gets complex, especially in a country like Greece, where I'm located, is when you have multi-orders coming from multiple different stores and from the warehouse, and how do you manage that kind of complexity? When do you make the decision to split an order in various elements, trading off cost versus customer service versus speed of delivery? So we've got a hybrid model basically catering for everything. The biggest problem we have is how do you consistently data-driven and manage that. And now at the moment I have 15 people behind computers with Excel doing that on a daily basis. So that is my challenge. How do you improve that? That's why I spoke to these guys as well. I need someone that can help me, let's say, make sense of it all and be able to set some ground rules to manage my chain.
Okay. Do you want to come back?
So that's where we have this simplicity in design approach, where, for example, our distributed order management system that I just showed is rule-based, and you can manage it without any code. You say, for example, one basic question often is, do you allow a split order or not? It's just click a button, yes, I allow that. And then you can specify, allow this when 5 items are ordered or 3 or 4. Very simple. Anybody can do that. And that's just the basics, basically. And then in addition, you can look into, do you want to balance the workload across your stores? Do you want to maximize it in one store because that store has the capabilities? You can just basically select this as a key determinant for the decision of the distributed order management system to route the orders. Or is it purely geographical proximity? So how close the store is to the order. The location basically of the customer order. And all of this is very simple, and if you're not happy with the existing rules, if you like, you can easily integrate your own rules via an API. So that is the idea of this complexity, because if you do this with linear optimization, Excel spreading, that's complicated. But to make it easy for you, and then you see how this works, and over time you adjust, and within, depending on your volume, say half a year, you typically have a setup that works. And there are lots of other dimensions behind this, but it's very simple. And I'm not coming from this space, I'm coming from the retail and IT space. And when we presented this here, I thought, well, it's not a big deal, but apparently it is a big deal, because apparently this simplicity, not a lot of other, I'm not saying we're the only ones, but not a lot of companies provide that. The complexity and simplify it for you to manage. That's really the idea. And to this question, we did, I think, 3 months ago, we asked a German Retail Association this very question. Mm-hmm. What is the biggest barrier? And we thought it's going to be culture.
Okay.
But it was actually IT, which on the one hand scared us a bit. On the other hand, it was good for us because one of the value propositions is that what we do is very simple. But believe it or not, even big names, big companies, big brands have systems that were coded in the 70s. And it's very difficult to do anything with those kind of things because at that time there was nothing like API, cloud computing, software as a service. So that's the biggest barrier. And we can, for example, if you're ready, we can start implementing distributed order management system within 5 days. Very, very fast.
Sorry, what can you do within 5 days?
Setting up a distributed order management system for a national retailer with, say, 1,000 outlets.
Wow.
If we're not talking about IT systems that were originally coded in the 70s, then we can't, because you have no interface. And that's the standard.
Yeah.
The US, for example, is always stated as the leading market. 90% of the big retailers, specifically in grocery, have POS systems from the 70s. Can't do anything.
Right.
So that is really a problem.
Right.
That's why I mentioned the digital transformation, because in order to do some of the things that we do, you need to digitally transform all the rest of it.
Okay. Right. So do you have, in terms of the commercials, how does that work? Is there how do you break the fee down? Is there a fee for the consultation to diagnose the challenge, and then you put a proposal together, this is what we're going to do, and it'll take this long? And typically, how does that work? And what's a typical return on investment? And do you have some case studies you can share?
So in terms of pricing, you typically have the implementation, which ideally we don't do. So we are more or less partner driven. So it's either the internal IT system of the customer, the bigger customers. Some of the bigger customers have their existing system houses, system integrators they work with. We use them because we need to integrate into your ERP system, into your POS system is the gold standard, because then you would really know at the store level what's going on. WMS, tons of systems depending on the setup that we need to integrate, because the order comes in, so very important is the shop. So your online shop, the order comes in, we get this, and then we take the distributed order management rules, for example, to apply it and then fulfill it. So that's the integration part, and then the actual operation, so that the system's up and running. There are, say, two basic models. One is a pay-per-performance model, so each order costs X in terms of an absolute value or percentage. But recently, specifically with the bigger customers, we've seen a flat rate. So the year cost X. And if you grow like crazy and you break it down to the actual fulfilled order, it's very cheap.
Yeah.
If you don't grow a lot, then it might be a bit expensive. But be experimental, essentially. So the pricing is, we don't have a list price, doesn't make sense at this point in time. So on the one hand, one extreme is pure variable performance-based, and the other one is a flat fee per annum.
Okay, cool. Anybody got any questions on what you just heard? I know you guys are already in dialogue. So, perhaps somebody else who's omnichannel retailer in the room? No? Okay. It's difficult, isn't it?
It's still too early.
So it is a bit early, but so from the commercials, you've covered that. And do you have any case studies in terms of, apart from the financial return on investment, but in terms of culture, that was your first belief before you did the research, was it was culture, okay? Have you got any examples of how the culture and rolling it out was a massive challenge, and how did the retailer overcome that? The gentleman's left the room now, but he had a good example about his people didn't like turning into logistics people.
Maybe two examples. One is at the level of the executives.
Right.
And I see two groups of prospects. One where the executives want a detailed business case, like 0.005% return rates, where it's very exact, detailed business cases. And the others who just believe all the way from the top, that's a cool idea, we should try it.
Yeah.
And what I see is those who have to develop a business case, and typically it's not the project manager, it's just the top management that says we need a business case, show me a positive return, something like that. They're very slow, takes them forever, and ultimately with innovation you can't really break it down to a solid business case. The ones who just believe in the technology, they know the millennials are expecting these kind of services and just do it, they are fast, and they're typically leading the pack. So that's one thing at the level of the executives. In terms of customers, I think it's important to not just decide to do it and roll it out, but involve the front-end staff.
Yeah.
In the decision how to do it, in the implementation phase, and not just say, here you go, here's your Android phone or whatever device is being used, now fulfill the order. So that's very important to involve them. And at least with most of our customers, what I see is that the frontline staff in the stores see this as a job enrichment rather than a burden. It's something in addition. It's variety in the job, if you like.
But also, I'm guessing these guys, they're not stupid. They know that if things don't change, then perhaps the store could close. So they need to recognize that if this is the future, we've got to embrace it. Yeah? Okay. Can I ask you, so most of the people in the room are probably logistics directors or the supply chain managers. Within a big organization, is it the marketing guy who knocks on your door and says, hey, we need to improve our proposition for the clients? Is it the logistics people who recognize we need to compete better with Amazon? Who is your internal client?
It's typically 3 groups, and it depends on the setup. So some customers have an omnichannel VP or head of omnichannel services.
Okay.
Or the head of e-commerce. But it's typically 3 groups that are ultimately involved in the decision. You have the e-com team or group. You have the IT folks, because we need to integrate into existing systems. And then you have the logistics folks. Okay. Logistics/supply chain folks.
But who tends to be the first one to drive the agenda?
E-com or omnichannel, yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay. Anybody got any questions now, or shall I? Yes, brilliant.
Yeah, I think we haven't got it right. So my name's Frank. I work for IKEA, and I think what's really interesting in this discussion of, do you want to allow a split order? How do you determine, is this going to be the right thing? Of course, from a customer perspective, I'm also a millennial, so I believe it should happen. I'm in that group. But I think if I offer an idea, and I don't know how that sits in your consideration of the future, but what's interesting for me is to understand, more than setting the rule on the split order based on the number of items, what's the margin behind? So having a tool that sees my last mile cost in 1- and 2-person flow versus parcel flow, and that goal-based orchestration.
Have you seen our product demo? I'm so glad he said that, because besides the number of orders or items in an order, that's the other dimension you could use, margin-based or absolute value of the order.
So that's already integrated in?
Already integrated.
Okay.
So thank you very much, sir. Unprompted, very good.
So just so I'm a little slow. So how this works? So you can identify from the basket order margin per product within the basket, and run click and collect option with a split order and work out. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Does that? Sorry, Olaf, is it? Yeah, Olaf. So that was your issue. Does that make sense to you? And is that something that would be interesting for you? Have margin level at product? Absolutely. Sorry, microphone.
It makes sense. It makes sense to make those trade-offs. On the other hand, if you only optimize on margin, you're optimizing your internal processes. We like to start with the customer, so then potentially you come to other decisions. But definitely you need to take it into consideration.
That's a really good point. And you said, what is it? What did you call it? It's the era of the customer. So that would suggest that there's a balancing act, isn't there, in terms of, we can make margin. Okay, interesting.
And actually, increasingly in this trade-off discussion, you have this sustainability dimension, which the millennials understand. So rather than 2 boxes, you get 1, but it might take longer, but you're okay with this because there's an environmental dimension to it.
Yeah, sure.
But it is this exact trade-off, and you should balance the 2.
Okay. All right. And any further comments? We've got about 5 minutes left. Is there anything you want to share with the guys in terms of, where you see the future going for the product, additional functionality further down the line that you're thinking of introducing?
So one thing we're currently, besides the usual AI that companies throw in, so of course we will also, this idea of what we just said, margin-based split orders, you could of course run an AI engine, and with all these transactions over, say, half a year, you get some additional insights. But one of the things we're trying to do Let me put one step back. At this point in time, and I'm not sure whether this will change, but the feeling I have is every customer discussion is a project in its own right, because the ERP system is a different ERP system, the e-shop system is a different system. It's a different type of product.
Yeah.
We come originally from the e-food, which is super complicated because of frozen food, and you have a non-frozen food, etc., etc. If say you sell in the apparel space, textile, it's a bit simpler. But still, even within the domain of one, say, apparel, one retailer is very different to the other. So what we are trying to set up is a process modeling tool within the system where you just pick the way you actually fulfill. And this has to do with split orders, yes or no. This has to do with the way things are fulfilled in the store, because there are different tactics, I learned. The way do you fulfill one order at a time? Do you have multiple orders that you fulfill at a time, and so on. So we are trying to make this very simple, regardless of what industry you're coming from, to sort of just click on these various options to customize your process. And that would be actually first in the industry. We hope to have this ready in autumn, later this year actually already.
Yeah.
It's already autumn.
I remember yesterday we talked about returns. Obviously in the fashion space, returns are huge, 25, 30, 40%, depending on the sector specific. So obviously returns is part of the box as well, in terms of you can manage the return and have instant visibility. Do you allow the store that receives the return, assuming it's brought into store, to assess the quality and and how many back to resell or destroy or?
Well, that's up to the retailer, of course.
Yeah.
But part and parcel of this ship from store or click and collect service, when you pack your goods, you can say, I add a return label.
Yeah.
And then when the customer comes back, you have the closed loop with the identifier. So you would know what the order was and so on. What then happens is up to the retailer. Different ways of doing this. I think currently the gold standard is if there is a return, it doesn't matter where you bought it, you just return it. So you don't have to go to the very same store, for example.
Yeah.
And then it depends on what kind of goods we're talking about, what kind of items. Of course, you need to quality check them. Mm-hmm. Can you resell them? In some cases, you can't. Or in some cases, there are no returns. You're not returning your frozen pizza, for example, right?
Yeah.
But you might return your jeans because it's too small, or the book is not in right condition, or it's the wrong one.
Okay.
But ultimately, the returns policy is up to the retailer. We can just support the logic, so that when the customer comes back with the items, the retailer knows it was that order, it was that customer, and then can decide what to do with it.
Okay. And remind everybody where your stand is, so if they want to come and see you afterwards.
All the way on the other side.
On the far wall from here.
Next to where the lovely smoothies are made.
Yeah, they are very good.
Yeah, they're very, very good. So come to have a smoothie and join us for the discussion.
Okay. Thank you, Jürgen. Been a pleasure. Thank you, guys. It's never really the first slot of the day, but I really appreciate your contribution. It makes my job a hell of a lot easier, right? Thank you. The next session starts in about 15 minutes. Thank you again.